Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9. I'm Paul Kretschmer. On today's broadcast, we'll be hearing about the Prison Fellowship Academy program to create lasting change. And we'll be speaking with Cody Wild, Vice President of Correctional Programs at Prison Fellowship.
So I work for Prison Fellowship. I'm the Vice President of Correctional Programs, and so I oversee all of our in-prison activity for the country.
For the entire country, and your location is where?
Minneapolis, Minnesota, but our, organization's headquarters is in Northern Virginia.
Okay, I suppose as they like to say, due to technology nowadays, you can be almost any place and still get the job done.
Exactly. We are predominantly remote, and I say I work from my house and the Minneapolis airport.
Okay. Yeah, I've passed through Minneapolis before. That's quite a large location.
It is. It's great because there are direct flights almost everywhere. Flying Delta.
Yeah. Okay. As far as the responsibility that you have concerned, could you describe for listeners a little bit about what you do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, me specifically or Prison Fellowship?
Both.
Okay, yeah. So Prison Fellowship is the nation's largest outreach to prisoners and their families. We started in 1976, founded by Chuck Colson, who went to prison for Watergate-related crimes. He was a part of Nixon's administration. And, we've gone through multiple evolutions over the years, but really with this central focus of partnering with the Lord and the local church to accomplish his purposes inside and outside of prison. And so what I get to oversee is all of our in-prison activity. If you think about a prison or a state like an ecosystem, at the core of that, the tip of the spear, are the men and women who live behind bars. Our in-prison programs are there to equip and empower those who live in prison to be change agents. So our cornerstone program is called the Prison Fellowship Academy. That takes individuals on a year-long journey to be transformed individually and to be a part of the transformation of a prison system. In addition to that, we want to pair those who live in prison with those who work in prison. So we have an innovative program called the Warden Exchange, which is a transformational leadership program for correctional officials to reimagine what prison could be, not just centers or places of punishment, but also centers of restoration. So that's where we really try to pair those who live in prison with those who work in prison to work together to change culture and to change lives. We do evangelistic events around the country called Hope Events. Those are yard events for anybody to participate in. Our largest program that we have at Prison Fellowship is called Angel Tree. And that's where a parent who's incarcerated can sign up to have a Christmas present delivered to their kids at Christmas time on their behalf. And so we partner with churches all around the country to purchase the gifts and to deliver it for them to the children at Christmas time. And we do that in all 50 states. And it's really a way to connect local families with local churches, hoping that that sparks a relationship between the children, their caregiver, and those churches, and really forms a year-round partnership and collaboration. And then, additionally, we do criminal justice reform to try to affect how people get to prison, what happens while they're there, and to remove obstacles and barriers upon release. So Prison Fellowship is a holistic organization looking at all different facets of crime and incarceration, but with a sincere belief in the redemptive power of Jesus Christ and how we might work with him toward achieving those ends.
Speaking of the result you just mentioned, I understand that there's been some programming going on at Prison Fellowship, which in some locations, at least I believe North Dakota may be the location, has resulted in a reduced recidivism, which for people who don't hear that word very often has to do with how often someone goes into a lockup and then comes out and then does something and then goes back in again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you might be referring to, there's a study done in Minnesota by the Minnesota Department of Corrections There's also one done in Texas. Texas Department of Criminal Justice did some evaluations on our programs. And yes, recidivism does measure, there are different definitions of recidivism, but it does measure, people are being reincarcerated. And our programs did show human flourishing, that people are becoming good citizens. They're becoming proactive members of society. With the belief that if a person is growing and becoming a person with more integrity, that they are more affirming of the gifts and abilities of other people, they're becoming more productive, if they're becoming more responsible, more restorative, they're seeking out and building up pro-social community, that the bad things take care of themselves. And so it's not so much asking the question, why do people go to prison? It's why don't people go to prison? And how do we instill that as the through line throughout all of our programs?
Now, as far as that's concerned, then, does that include, for the most part, people who have gone through a redemption experience through Jesus Christ, or does that apply to a wider prison population where an inmate hasn't made that declaration, but still, for instance, shows the kind of the reduction in rate that you mentioned a moment ago? Yes, I'm here.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Yeah. Does that include people who have met Jesus Christ behind bars, or does that include people also who haven't?
The recidivism rates?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's not a part of the equation. And so what we're really asking is, in all of our programs, a person is going to encounter Jesus. We are an unashamed Christian organization, but the programs that have been measured are open to people of any faith and no religious practice. What we would say is everybody has a place to belong, regardless of what they believe. And we're going to teach from this angle. But it's between you and the Lord to make that decision. And so we try to actually take an approach more akin to, in Acts 8, the story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch, where the Lord tells Philip, just get close to this chariot. Doesn't tell him much else. He gets there and he hears the Ethiopian man reading aloud the book of Isaiah. And it's about Jesus. And he asks him, what's that about? And he's like, I don't know. How can I know unless somebody tells me? So Philip explains it to him, and he journeys with the man, and he comes to faith. Our approach is very similar. We journey with people that our programming and our curriculum really functions like that book of Isaiah and that story. But we stay close to people. We respond to the questions they're asking, rather than beginning with answers to questions nobody's asking. We've seen many people come to know the Lord through that. But there are, certainly people who go through the program. They aren't believers when they come in, and you don't know if they're believers or not upon completion, but who have become better citizens, that they're growing in their integrity, that they're seeking out better community. And so we really see that as, in addition to, sharing the gospel, the explicit gospel of Christ's death, and resurrection, there's also an element of common grace there, that as a response to the gospel, we also want to create a culture and to inflict a culture with the values that really mirror the kingdom of God.
If a listener would like to know more, since some of your responsibility is nationwide, could you give them a contact point, at least nationally, if not in a region?
Yeah, I would just say visit our website at prisonfellowship.org. It's going to have a list of all of our different program areas, as well as ways that you can participate in those wherever you are.
Thank you very much for the generosity of your time today, Cody. I very much appreciate talking to you one-on-one.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul.
The graduates of the program had a 0.8% recidivism rate compared to the state's 40%. Studies like these appear to prove the effectiveness of the Academy in improving not only the lives of incarcerated individuals, but the communities they enter upon release. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049, or you can email us, office@wihsradio.org. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretschmer for the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.